Hi, A.J.Hartley here, novelist, Shakespeare professor, baby metal fan. It feels like a long time since I've said that. I haven't made a lot of baby metal music videos recently, but today I'm patching a hole in the canon of baby metal songs, which I haven't talked about. This was one that I wanted to do about 18 months ago, but I couldn't satisfy myself about what the lyric actually was. I'm talking, of course, about From Dusk Till Dawn. And I agonized over it for a long time. I couldn't come to a clear sense of what the lyric was, and therefore it didn't make a lot of sense to talk about it. But I've done a couple of other things, which I'm going to explain in a second, and I have a guest who I've been talking to about the song for a while. So here we go. I hope you like it. Thanks. Okay, so I have a special guest today. This is my friend Jonathan, who is a science professor, an amateur musician, and a baby metal fan. How are you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, we've been looking forward to it for about 6 months, it seems, which I think is when we started corresponding specifically about this song. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So we'll start off by talking about what makes From Dusk Till Dawn unusual within the baby metal canon. And then we'll talk about the specific problems of deciphering the lyric. And then we'll work through that lyric. And then we'll have a sort of an open conversation about what we think it all adds up to, what it finally means. If we can come to any kind of determination on that, though, as you and I have said, it may be that our final assessment is less about meaning and more about something that isn't really meaning.
Or the limitations of meaning.
Yeah, exactly. So as we have said in correspondence, this is baby metal's only entirely English song that has no Japanese version, right?
That's right. Not that I've found.
Yeah. The One has a Japanese version. Elevator Girl, there's a Japanese version, which is better than the English version. But this is unusual. Obviously, this is a song off the second album, and if the first album is very, very Japanese in its self-definition, Metal Resistance is the album that was sort of leading their global advance as they were sort of touring more widely. So it could be that the decision to include an all-English song is part of that deliberate strategy. Though you earlier, when we were just chatting, said that in some ways it might be their most Japanese song, which is really interesting, and I can't wait to get back to that after we've talked about the lyric. It's not very frequently performed. It was included in the last round of Budokan shows, kind of by fan pressure. There's no official lyric sheet. There's no official music video, all of which is sort of odd, right? Because, I mean, everything else, you have something which is semi-definitive to go to. And it's partly, of course, why I have taken 2 years to getting around to talking about the song, because it's one thing to analyze lyrics when you know what the lyrics are. It's another thing to analyze lyrics when you're far from clear exactly what the lyrics are. And one of the things that you and I also both observed is that where there is live video of the performance, there's an odd tendency to constantly cover Sue Metal's mouth with the microphone, almost as if it's a deliberate attempt to sort of to make lip reading harder.
I take a little bit of a different spin on that, actually, because I think it also probably has to do with in the way Sue Metal is trying to modulate her voice and to control where the recording is occurring in the space in front of her. And I've noticed on many songs that she's extremely skilled at doing this. And you know, the outstanding example is Rondo of Nightmare, where she produces this effect and this nasal quality by placing the mic in a certain location. And it's not entirely additional effects or edited effects. It's in fact her ability to control where her voice is being projected from. So it may have to do with that as well, I think.
Okay, that's fair.
And you know, this is also a bit of a reflection on why it's so rarely performed, and that is, I actually think it's incredibly difficult technically to perform this song. It really seems to be working at the very edge of her ability to control her vocals.
Yeah.
And there's very complicated background harmonization happening. And you know, what's interesting to me is that even though it's so rarely performed, the choreography is exquisite.
Oh yeah,
it's extremely detailed, and so there's been a huge investment in this song.
Yeah, it's funny that when you talk to Baby Metal fans, this is often a song that people cite amongst their favorites, even though there's no consensus about what it's actually about, right? That there's an atmospherics to it. And again, I think we'll get into this a little bit more later on, but that the sort of tonality of the thing, I think, is powerful and appealing.
And I understand from someone who was at the Budokan performances that it was incredibly emotional. That the direct impact of being there live was apparently quite extraordinary.
That doesn't surprise me. That's interesting. Yeah. So as far as the problems of the lyrics are concerned, as you said, there are specific vocal effects that are naturally produced, which may create a kind of distortion. There's also a sort of compression and electronic processing of at least certain parts of the song, which seem to sort of make it harder to determine exactly what's being said. There's also questions of English pronunciation, you know, and is often the case when English words get used in Japanese songs. Sometimes the natural scansion of the word can be disrupted in ways that makes it harder to grasp what's being said. This happens in English songs as well, of course, where people sort of choose to put an emphasis on a part of the word that doesn't normally get stressed. There was a song out last year called Miss Murder that I remember hearing on the radio about 100 times before I figured out what it was actually saying, because they were stressing it as Miss Murder. And I was like, I have no idea what that is. It was only when I saw it written down that I realized. So the scansion issues, the question of natural emphasis on which part of the word, I think, is a factor as well, which sometimes doesn't make it through translation. And then the possibility, of course, that the lyrics don't actually make sense, that the English is not great, right? And I'm not sure how I feel about this, because obviously Baby Metal and other Japanese bands often incorporate English, and sometimes the incorporation of that English is slightly unusual. It's more a sort of Janglish, right? That the English words are being used in a slightly different way. But it seems to me that when they write an actual English song like the one, it's perfectly clear, it's perfectly easy to understand, and either their songwriters or people who they're running it by are making sure that the English works perfectly fine. So I'm consequently a little bit baffled when I get, let me pull this up. I was looking, I just Googled the lyric as it appears just on the first thing that comes up on Google. And let me give you a sample. One only waits, something's going to come in one's way. I want to take every going on toward what to take. Something's going to come in the air, pray upward. And then later on, look at my face more day after day, then reach, it's the same. So each day's so same. I wake from the dream to keep on dreaming. The night is so sweet, but it's so late. Great. I mean, this is gibberish, right? This is nonsense.
This is Googlish.
Yeah,
this is pure Googlish, and it's interesting. Several things come up. One is that you hear different things if you're following the lyrics.
Right.
So if you actually have the lyrics in front of you, you start hearing what the lyrics say because it's suggestion. Another thing that's interesting is that not all the versions are identical.
Right.
And if you keep listening to multiple versions, you end up discovering there are in fact different things being said occasionally. But I think one thing that really strikes me about it is that Baby Metal and Su Metal in particular are masters of their craft.
Mhm.
They work immensely hard. I mean, certainly in interviews, Sue Metal has indicated it takes her a long time to get, comfortable with the song, to understand what she wants to get out of the song. So she's really practicing. She's intensely thinking about it. She obviously thinks very hard about pronunciation and all of these things. And so I'm inclined to the belief that if we're hearing something that they didn't want us to hear, that would be a bit unusual.
Yeah.
I actually think that this is more intentional than some people will give it credit for me. I think there's an effect being achieved here, which is the effect they intend. Now, I may be completely wrong on this, but it just strikes me that when there's the artistry that Sue Metal exercises, but there's also the craftsmanship.
Yeah.
When she says it took me a year to really know how to sing this song, or you consider something like BMC, where she puzzled out ways of doing things without having to have an overload of special effects, makes me think that this is more intentional than one might guess.
So we're going to look at the song itself, and what we've done is the reason that it took me a while to get around to doing this is that a friend of mine, Benjamin Stickles, who's a sound engineer who I've worked with in performance a number of times, has taken the song and then tried to sort of strip out some of the frequencies that were getting in the way of the vocal, so that to make it a little bit clearer, a little bit sharper. And we've tried this a couple of times. It's only partially successful because, unlike on the TV cop shows where they can take a tape and then sort of take a recording, take all these different sounds out to get something perfectly clear, that's not actually how it works at all, right? Unless you have the masters, where you've got all the individual elements that you can remove one by one. What we have is more like a bunch of different paint that's been mixed together in a bucket. And you can't say, okay, now we'll take out the yellow and see what's there. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah. So he's cleaned it up as best we can to unpeel some of that sort of compression. And then you and I have listened to it, and we're going to go through it sort of line by line now. And, as I said before, we're not looking to come up with a definitive answer. We're far from convinced that we can come up with a definitive answer, or that coming up with a definitive answer is actually desirable. So, but let me see if I can share my screen, and we can go through it line by line and see what we think. All right, so let's just take it a few lines at a time. And because we've messed around with the sound, the sound quality overall is not good. It's going to sound very tinny because we've sort of tried to lift the vocal line to make it a little clearer. And the video is a YouTube clip of a bunch of different performances of the song that have been patched together. But the sound originally was from the Budokan show.
And I think it's important to listen to it with the video, because they are making hand motions, as they always do, that are interpretive. They may not be immediately understandable, but they seem to be interpretive in part.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's give it a shot. Stop there. So in the sort of dodgy translation that I was talking about before, what we got was, one only waits, something's going to come in one's way. Now, do you want to offer me your I was going to say friendly revision, but I'm not sure it's friendly.
Friendly revision. No, I think the first line, I mean, again, you have to really listen for some of the initial consonants, but I believe this is the falling day, and the hand movement that they make is as if the sun is passing down, which then is logically followed by what I think is the next line, which is sun is going down, or
Yeah.
the sun is going down.
Yeah.
And I have to say that if you translate it the way I have, or interpret it the way I have, you do get a meter,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is actually constructed in a meter.
Yeah.
So the falling day, the sun is going down. That seems to go along with the motions they're making as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then sun is going down in the air is
Yeah.
how I hear that.
Yeah, I agree.
And the reason I say that is because I can hear the R.
In air, you mean?
Air.
Yeah.
And this is important because this same very similar line gets used over and over throughout the entire song. But the way in which the end of the word is finalized is actually different, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know, I mean, we're going to get into, well, I'll wait till we get to the next one. But yeah, okay. So far we can, maybe what I'll do at the end is put together another video with our lyrics superimposed on it. And then people can
That would be interesting.
Tell us what a load of crap we're talking or something, which is probably what will happen. Okay, so next.
Yay.
So good.
It's so good. I mean, they've established so much in that very short space, right?
Yeah.
And the thing one immediately notices, they're doing the typical baby metal thing, which is they are switching up the melodies and the rhythms continuously. So you think you're going this way, and suddenly you're going this way, and you commented on that before. And of course, this makes the interpretation that much more difficult.
Right. Yeah. So you want to give me your take?
Well, this is one of the ones that I find actually very difficult. I definitely hear I'm walking.
Yeah.
But I'm never sure whether the word that follows is home or there.
Yeah. I wondered about there as well, because I thought I was hearing something in terms of the vowel, something closer to that.
Yeah, I'm hearing a tendency to the R, but the other thing that I'm thinking here is that it actually goes along with the in the air.
Yeah.
I'm walking there in the air.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if they're rhyming. But
I also wondered if I wondered if I was hearing I walk ahead. I mean, I'm not hearing a final consonant, but I wondered if I was something maybe along those lines. But I agree with you that I'm walking somewhere.
And I've also wondered if this actually is one of the ones that changes. And I'm also wondering if it's one of the ones where there are two different words superimposed.
Okay.
It's that one I find very tricky, whether it's I'm walking home or I'm walking there. But I do think they're walking.
Yeah. And it's sunset. And we're walking, and then what's your next line?
I'm walking home, never ending road, walking home, sun is going down.
Yeah.
That's the repetition of that line.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I wondered if the sun might be going up at the end, but I like never ending road. It's certainly better than every going on.
I like the impression that this is somebody walking towards their home, walking towards morning.
Yeah.
I mean, at certain points of time, I always look at this and say, okay, what is the dusk to dawn actually about? It seems to me to be about a journey through darkness.
Yeah.
It's a journey through all the things we associate with darkness, doubt, fear, loneliness. So that's I see that as this never-ending road that you take in life through these things, and this is entering the dark phase, which conjures up all kinds of things related to darkness as well.
And things that baby metal are constantly exploring, right? In songs like Akatsuki or Amore or any number of songs where the singer, the speaker is positioned within a night, a period defined as somehow dark or imposing, and we're waking. Even Brand New Day, right? enacts a similar kind of movement. So I think so. I'm not entirely certain where we're walking to, but we're walking, and it's in that kind of dusk. I was looking for a word to mean dusk, and I was like, well, maybe we go with dusk since it's in the title, idiot. Yeah. Yes, well-deserved cheer.
I mean, that is extraordinary vocal pyrotechnics.
Yeah.
I mean, right there's, in my opinion, Sue Metal earns, a top place in vocalists. I mean, that to being able to do that without breaking her voice is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And again, the choreography leading into it is so brilliant and effective. But what does it say? And this is another tough one, because we had in the air, I think, and now we've got what I think is in the end. And the reason I think it's in the end is because the last consonant is cut off. There's no going on. It's in the end.
Yeah. You may be right. I'm not sure. I've wrestled with this a number of times, because obviously in Japanese, the vast majority of words end in a consonant vowel cluster, right? Because that's the nature of the language. A, I, U, E, O, kakiku, keko, mami, mua, all right. So when Japanese people speak a word like end, they frequently say endo. So the final consonant gets over enunciated. Now, but the one exception, of course, is that you can end a Japanese word with an N sound, with no subsequent vowel. So I think if what we're hearing is in the N and the D itself has sort of disappeared, in order to make sure that the scansion doesn't break, so we don't get endo, which wouldn't fit the rhythm of the line. So maybe we finish up with in the N and the D is implied. Or maybe it's still air. I'm not sure.
And I'm not sure from version to version either.
Right.
I have to say.
And I don't know to what extent it makes that much difference, except that, and obviously this is a line, a phrase that's going to come up several times in the song, and it's the final phrase of the song. So it's important. And I think that, the difference between in the end, we're looking towards something specific and concrete and obviously conclusive, is one way of thinking about it. In the air, to me, is a little bit more optimistic. It's a little bit more positive. It's like there is something in the air, right? A sense of something that to me sort of fits the overall tone of the song, but I'm not sure.
I don't know. I certainly defer to your understanding of Japanese pronunciation. And it may well be, it may well be air, because what I'm not sure is it doesn't transition back and forth.
Right.
And in terms of meaning, and every now and then I look at this and think, does this mean something other than ghoulish? Fade away in the air. Fade away,
I like. Yeah,
is a very, is also very suggestive, but interestingly enough, that makes less sense at the end of the song. So maybe these things are in fact being played with. I think they're being messed with a lot, actually.
And I do like your fade away. Certainly better than pray upward. Who comes up with this stuff? Okay. All right, good. Okay, before we go into the little word listy thing there.
Yeah.
This is true. I must have listened to this about 50 times yesterday, trying to clarify what Moa is saying.
And I will really suggest at this point that people need to listen to multiple versions, because this passage is not identical across the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, definitely the on the border seems to me one of the things that's very clear. And that makes again sense in terms of I'm on this journey, I'm walking somewhere, and I cross the border between day and night.
Right. I think that's the key. I think when I first saw on the border, I thought, well, wait, what is that? And I was thinking of the border in geographical terms, right? But I don't think that's what it is. I think it's that sort of barrier between categories, periods, whatever. It's that a borderlands of some sort. But yeah, I agree.
And after that, all bets are off. Because what I hear is in the first time I hear "don't stop for them." That's what I hear. I hear "don't stop for them," and it's fairly clear to me.
Okay.
And then it repeats the "on the border," and sometimes I hear a repetition of "don't stop walking," and sometimes I hear "don't stop for them."
Right. And in between, we're getting "sun is going down" from Sue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like the sense of it. I'm just not absolutely sure that that's what I'm hearing, but I don't have a better alternative. As I said, I listened to it over and over yesterday, and I kept trying to tweak the sound and boost different things. And as you said before, the fact that the voices are overlaid, I don't have the mental discipline to stay with one when the other one comes in. I immediately switch to, oh, sun's going down. And then I forgot that I missed the thing that was going on before it, and I have to go back. Yeah. And I can't seem to get it.
And when I listen to one version, I hear the repetition of "don't stop for them." And when I hear another version, I hear the repetition of "don't stop walking."
Yeah.
Which is odd, because there are two syllables versus one syllable. So you would think reasonably that you would be able to distinguish them. And again, there's this distortion effect. But to think about what would make sense in this passage, you're going to the border, and it's the idea of continuing on,
right?
Like not stopping, not getting caught in that borderland.
Yeah. And I think, the scansion thing that we were talking about before, when you're saying "don't stop walking," are we hearing "don't stop walking," or are we hearing "don't stop walking"?
Yeah.
The second?
I think it's the second one.
Okay. Which is maybe why I'm struggling to hear it. Yeah.
At least the first time through, that's what I think. The second time, I'm less convinced, but the distortion from the superimposition of voices is more harsh on the second one than the first one.
Yeah. Okay, I'll back it up tiny bit, because I think the list started. So what do we have for our list?
I have "feel, pain, alone, forever, heart, blind eye, no more, and runaway."
Yeah. Yeah, the very first part of the list is the hardest, I think, to hear, for me at least. But I like that. I like that list. I think it squares with what I'm hearing, and I think it makes sense. And again, it's a very baby metal list, right?
Oh, it's hauled straight from some of the earlier songs, like "I Gem," right? I mean, it actually corresponds to some of their earlier songs.
Yeah.
And of course, they're also making some hand motions,
which
they're making a heart, they're making forever, right? So you're getting clues, you're getting visual clues about it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very baby metal thing, because they use their, I mean, I have not tried to decipher this in this one, but they actually use meaningful hand symbols that come out of things like Shingon and so forth. So that's interesting too.
Yeah. So "feel, pain, alone, forever, heart, blind eye, no more, run away. So there's a journey right there in the list, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
So we start off in pain and isolation, alone, forever, hearts, again, connecting to the pain, and then blind eye, but that's followed immediately, blind eye, no more, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whatever that sort of, that initial period is, it's somehow being defined by pain and not being able to see, but a rejection of that as we go into the runaway. So again, as we were saying before, it's that sense of journey, of a transition, a moving out of a previous phase into something new. Yeah.
Yeah, I see it, to go back to the other one where don't stop walking, it's almost as if, if you get caught up in those dark forces and those issues and those guardians of the borderline, you will be trapped there. And this is saying, don't be blind, run.
Okay.
Get through it.
Yeah. All right, let's do a bit more.
Look at my face, for day after day. Oh, which is the fate? So is this the fate? Awake from the dream, to keep and believe. The light get its free, a deep silence.
Oh, so good. So good.
I know.
Okay, so you want to walk us through it?
At the present time, and I can be dissuaded, I hear this as, look at my face for day after day, and which is the fake? So is this the fate? I wake from the dream to keep and believe, the light yet is free, a tear silent break.
Okay, so you did go with tear instead of deep. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. So look at my face. Yes, I still hear more day after day. And I at first I thought, well, what does that mean? More day after day. And then I thought, that makes a lot more sense if we put a comma in after the more. Look at my face, more, day after day. So it's like the thought is repeated. And which is the fake? So
I hear
is
the
this
fate very clearly on that one.
Yeah, I agree. And she seems to go out of her way to distinguish between fake and fate in the next line. I hear that T sound. I wake from the dream to keep and believe the light yet is free. To keep and believe the light. Yeah, to keep and believe that the light is still free, right? That's the sense.
That's the sense I get from it.
Yeah, okay.
I find some of that last line, the light is yet free, is wobbly. I'm not sure which way it's actually going, which word is actually there.
Yeah.
But that sense, I think, follows from the preceding pretty clearly. And to keep and believe seems to be one of the lines that people don't agree on very much.
Yeah. But do you want to unpack what your sense of the look at my face part means, and this stuff about fake and fate? Because I know we've talked about this a little bit already.
I mean, this conjures up a number of thoughts. It conjures up, is this person looking in the mirror at themselves and trying to ascertain whether that's really them or whether it's the projection of them, they're another persona. And asking this question, which is the fake. But similarly, it can also be, look at my face. You look at my face and you tell me if what you're looking at is real or fake. Yeah. Whether you see the real me or whether you're seeing a persona, a fake persona that I'm putting on. And then asking, is this the fate? Are we condemned to not being able to distinguish between the fake and the real? And this obviously plays a really major role in a lot of baby metal. I mean, I'm seeing it now in the other one. I mean, the fact that some of their things are the mirror and the distorted mirror says they're playing with glass again.
Yeah.
And it's a theme that is very deeply entrenched in I would say the soul of baby metal, because they're very much in this liminal, in this space where fantasy and reality are merging. And you know, even the fact that they have their stage name, and
Yep.
obviously we know there's a real person. We know there's somebody, Suzuka Nakamoto, that's a real person, and you can read interviews with her, but you still won't get a lot of information about herself or
Yep.
lower level as people. You know, they're people. What you get from the interviews is a sense of them as artists and as
Right.
musicians, and their engagement with their audience, and so that's a part of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's this constant play of, you know, the stage name, the appearance, the never getting out of character,
Yep.
you know, the turning up even at the New Year thing in their character.
Yep.
They're very, very strongly adhering to that, and we see it with the camis as well.
Yep.
Right? That there's a real effort at suspension of belief or suspension of reality in this liminal space that they occupy when they are performing as BABYMETAL.
Yeah, hence the costumes, and yeah, absolutely.
And so this, but then the question can be legitimately asked, is that fake?
Right.
Or is that just another facet of the reality that is these people and these artists and these musicians? So I find that that's there, but there's also, I think there's also something more somber, something more tragic about it, something that you wouldn't ask that question if you weren't troubled by the fact that you can't tell what is real and what is fake.
Yeah.
There's something there as well, that comes across, I think, also in the way in which it's sung.
Yeah.
You know, there's almost a despair. I look in the mirror, or you look at me, and you can't tell whether I'm real or fake.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think this is common to other musicians as well, and to actors, right? That especially in terms of dealing with their fan base, because the fan base falls in love with the characters they play and their persona on stage and so on. And there's a sense that nobody actually gets who you actually are, and they're actually not that interested in who you actually are, right?
And then there's another aspect of BABYMETAL that has been very clear over the years. And it started off with their you know, talk about being possessed, that they are in some ways inhabited by, possessed by the kami, the spirit,
the fox god.
Fox god. And in that altered state is when they are performing and how they're able to do that performance. And you know, in their early interviews, they talk about that in a very sincere way. I mean, they talk about, you know, being in this state where they don't even remember what they were doing when they were performing, which I think is not implausible at all, because I think that flow state, that ecstatic state, is something that many artists strive for when they're performing. But it's interesting that they articulate this, and so and they articulate it sometimes in the third person. They talk about, well, you know, I can be cool Su-metal. It's not really me. It's somebody else takes over me, and so again, there's this question that arises, which is, would the real Su-metal please stand up?
Yes, and I think the very proximity between Suzuka and Su-metal, you know, the fact that it's not, I don't know, any actor playing a completely different character where there's a clearer separation between the two. But here, the character performed is somehow an aspect of the actual self, right? Seen through some sort of distorting lens or somehow,
mirror.
Right. Well, right. Right. All right. Let's go through. Before we talk about the lyric, you know, just to pick up on what you were saying before, the choreography of that musical break is much more has a sort of martial artsy kind of feel, right? That if that sort of tragic element that we're glimpsing in the previous section, this is where it kicks in, and now we have to fight it off in order to get to whatever resolution the final lines give us, and that's such a much more harmonious kind of conclusion, or at least that's the way I read it.
And you know, to follow on from that, I mean, in one moment we're going to get this transformation of the light, and we're going to get a transformation from the very, you know, key that the music is.
Yeah.
There is a disjunction there that's spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's hear the last.
All is over, never, never. All is over, never, never.
Oh, it's so great. You're right. The key shift.
Yeah.
And the fact that it goes up a tone, you know, that sort of lifts there's a positivity and optimism, I think, that you can hear that comes on with the lights as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the breaking of the day. It's we've gotten through the dark soul of the night.
Right.
And the dawn has come.
Yeah.
And they've used pretty much every trick in the book, given the staging they have, to accomplish it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really admirable.
And the lines themselves at the end here.
Oh, see, it seems to me that there are two voices. I mean, it's only Sue Metal singing, but it's all is over, and then the denial of that, never, never, or never, ever.
Yeah, I was going to say never, ever, but I think it works either way. Yeah. So that the sense of, yeah, something is concluded, and then, as you say, a rejection, the sense that nothing is ever finished, right? That you're always sort of in media res, as it were. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In the
Excellent. All right. So yeah, so then we get back to our, whether it's in the air or in the end, to be our concluding thought.
And I'm inclined, as I say, when I look at it from a semantic viewpoint, instead of listening to pronunciation strictly, all is over, never, never in the end, or never, ever in the end. Never in the end is it actually always over.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
that's where I come to, but I'm not sure that that's always what they're singing in the earlier part.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like that idea. If it's in the air, then that's a separate thought. So all is over, never, ever. That's end of that thought. And then in the air, there's opportunity, there's something, there's, I don't know, there's just a different, it's disconnected from the previous thing for me. But yeah, I think it could go either way.
And it's accompanied by, I think, when you see that key change and you see the lighting change, this power gesture, right? They make this power gesture as if they are now empowered, and then they turn it into a prayer.
Right.
And so it's you know, combining that with either of these interpretations is, I think, a way of looking at it. But big but.
Well, yeah. And maybe this is where we sort of come to our conclusion. So having sort of gone through it, and there's still a lot of ambiguity. We're still, you know, picking our way through, and we have some uncertainties about things. But, you know, as we were saying before, maybe that's the point, right? I think, you know, we can agree that the song is very baby metal in that it seems to be about effort and persistence, moving from darkness into something better, and that we're inhabiting a kind of borderland. It's a transitional stage, and that's what the song is about. But it remains enigmatic. It remains mysterious, and I think the sound of it all is part of the reason that people respond viscerally to it is that it has such strong atmospherics, and you know, I thought maybe it's almost like the positive version of Rondo of Nightmares. You know, that there's a similarly dreamlike quality to it, but this time the ending is more potentially positive, at least.
That a day comes and you can escape from the nightmare that you're trapped in the rondo.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting. You know, one of Baby Metal's lyricists in an interview talked about the idea of lyrics creating a world, that lyrics combine with the music to create an emotional world, a world of feeling. And I think that's very evident here. I think I wrote to you and said, you know, there's almost a sort of semantic indeterminacy. It's almost like there's a wave function here that we're being exposed to, and it collapses for everybody in a slightly different way because everybody observes it slightly differently, or in this case, listens to it slightly differently. And I think that that's part of the quality. Again, I think this is almost intentional, or I think it is intentional, that this intention is there to make this enigmatic, to make this not something that you can immediately hear and settle on what you have heard.
Yeah.
It's more like a painting that's been made with sound, and you have a very abstract painting, and it's really up to you to look at this and to have it flow over you and to have it, you know, touch the parts that at this moment are relevant to you.
Yeah, and you know, you and I had both, you had suggested that there's an element of the Yugen in the way that we might think about this. You want to talk a little about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, this can be seen as a song very much infused with Japanese and the cultural roots of Japanese aesthetics and Japanese art. This idea of Yugen, which is really has many meanings, like these words do. I mean, it has this idea of impenetrable, of spaces that are ill-defined, of you know, dark beauty, and specifically the idea of looking at something and not seeing the superficial beauty, but getting a sense and receiving the interior beauty of that thing. And that's really very interesting to me because, you know, I've done a fair amount of reading in Kashmiri Tantra, and the philosophers in Kashmir who sort of developed the higher forms of this were, interestingly enough, concerned with aesthetic theory, and, you know, postulating that the sense that something is beautiful, the moment you encounter that sense, the moment that you have that feeling, that is the essence of coming into contact with the ultimate base of reality. That it's beauty that is the way, not rational thought, not reasoning things out, but this impact of something that is beautiful. And I think very much that's here. But if you look at Yugen a little more deeply, it's also very much about the spaces. It's also very much about creating that place where the artist cannot do everything for the viewer or for the listener. That the listener has to be an active agent in this interaction as well. And so there's this space here, this undefined, where the listener's imagination is triggered.
Yep.
And explores it and discovers the beauty for themselves. And I think that, yeah, I mean, looking at what I have read of Japanese aesthetic theory, you know, whether it's no theater or haiku or painting, these are very much the themes. And, you know, I raised the word haiku because you talked about what at the beginning we talked about what is this, and I think it has some very, very strong elements of haiku in it.
I think you're right, and I think part of and you know, one of the things about Yugen is that sense that the feeling that it triggers is a sort of recognition of usually the natural world, natural beauty, which is beyond language. right? Beyond your capacity to articulate it. But because, as you suggest, it's not an intellectual process, it's a recognition of something which is profound. And I think that the aesthetics of the haiku actually work in similar ways, that often haiku are structured out of observations which are in some ways indeterminate. And I think one of the things that Western readers get frustrated with haiku is that they want to know what it means. What does it mean? What does it add up to? It's like, but that's the point. The point is that it doesn't necessarily lead to a specific idea or observation which is intellectually articulate, but it's an impression that is supposed to generate reflection, right? That it's sort of, I mean, as you were suggesting before, that a lot of this is rooted in a kind of Buddhist mysticism, or, the contemplation of the world rather than the deciphering of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. I mean, when I've been exploring quite a bit of Tang Dynasty Chinese poetry, which is really Chan poetry, which is the roots of Zen. And it strives for much the same. It strives for things coming of themselves. And this fundamental idea of spontaneity, that the response is spontaneous, and that's then the authentic and the meaningful response. And also this focus on the spaces, this focus on things becoming and being and then disintegrating and then coming again. And so you look at paintings that come from that period and you see, cloudy horizons and cloud-covered mountains where the mountains or the dragons are emerging and then disappearing again into it. And I have that sense with this song as well. There's this sort of continuously things are appearing and disappearing. You're close to something, you're far away from something again. And so I think it very much fits with that approach to aesthetic.
Yeah, I think so. And again, with borders and that liminal, that sort of between categories kind of state. Yeah. And as we were joking before we started recording, it's difficult for people like us because it's the opposite of what we do, right? As academics, right? Our pursuit is always to try and nail down meaning and argument in intellectual terms. And I think it's one of the reasons that these kind of songs are simultaneously fascinating and conflicting because they refuse to give us those answers.
I think that's very much the attraction I find to this one. I mean, I'm really like pretty much all BABYMETAL songs because I find in each one there's been a great deal of consideration and exploration of ideas and where can we take this creatively, and also this idea that you've raised many times of hybridity, the fact that they're constantly trying to bring things that don't quite belong or don't belong at all together and seeing what the juxtaposition achieves. My thought on BABYMETAL in this regard is that they are a psychologically very complex artistic group. I mean, it's obviously a group of people engaged in this, and there may be, visions of things that are given by one or another member of the group, but it's a very psychologically sophisticated artistry that they're doing here. Now, it starts with the fact that they have such heavy metal, and we know that heavy metal in itself has a tremendously cathartic effect. That it's a direct appeal to the autonomic nervous system,
right?
And with the sounds and the growls and the darkness and the heavy beats, and then on top of that, you've layered this virtuosic instrumentation and this incredibly fast set of rhythms that are polyrhythms. And so, in a way, it's almost as if you're confusing the observer. And BABYMETAL does this exquisitely with their sudden changes in where they're going.
And then you're layering on top that sort of ethereal vocal and
that between that wall of sound, which we know has this cathartic effect, and studies have shown that the lyrics mean almost nothing in metal music in terms of the physiological effect.
Right.
The physiological effect is quite, uninterested in whether, you're eating somebody or beating somebody. The lyrics don't matter. It's the sound of the lyrics that matter. Right. And then baby metal interjects this transcendent positive messaging and embodies it, because there's a somatic quality to the baby metal, because they have such intricate and thought through choreography, that there's a somatic element as well. So they've interjected between the audience and the music, this additional component, which, I would say is fairly fundamental to the idea of the one.
Yeah.
That what they're achieving here is deliberate, and it is to leave people feeling empowered.
Yeah.
To have people feel that they're among friends, that they're in part of a group, and that the message is positive, but they've also had the catharsis of the growls and the heavy drums and whatever else, and I don't think that's done anywhere else, in at least not at the sophistication that baby metal is pulling it off.
And I think, as this analysis makes clear, it does those things, it achieves those things, even when people don't understand the words, that they get the sentiment. You talk about the positive messaging and such, you can say that about BABYMETAL or something like that, and people can sort of get a general sense of what the song is about. But when most Western audiences are listening to this song, they do not know what the song is saying. They do not know what the words actually are. And you can sit down and study it, but you're not hearing it and immediately getting those words on a kind of gut level as you hear the song. But it doesn't matter, because somehow you're feeling it, you're sensing it. The tonality of the thing is conveying that sort of general positivity. At least that's how I feel about it.
It's as I wrote, and to me, if elves sang metal music, right, this would be metal music for elves, and it's the same idea. And I think this is a very important concept, because what baby metal plays with the most is the psychological impact of sound. And whether we're talking about losing yourself in the complex guitar solos, or being sort of compelled to watch the percussion, or you're totally caught up in Sue Metal's voice. They are playing with sound. They are painting pictures in your head with sound, and they're very, very good at it.
That's what it comes down to. And maybe, maybe this is a great point to sign off. We've been talking for about an hour, and I think that's a good final thought.
Good
thought. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining me from Rivendell, and and sharing your insights and your thoughts. It's really, really great to have you on.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I really enjoyed this, and hope we can talk again soon.
Yeah, so do I. Okay, let me turn the recording off. Has it stopped?
Red light still beating.
Why is it doing that? Don't tell me it wasn't recorded. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. It was longer than I intended, but I really enjoyed the conversation, so I let it run. And maybe this will be the last baby metal video I make for a little while. We'll see. We still live in hope that there'll be new material at some point. In the meantime, I will have other things in the works, so please keep your eyes open on the channel. As ever, like, comment, subscribe.
Blah, blah, blah.
But I mean that actually seriously. Check out my Patreon page, buy one of my books, and I will see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.